Dear guests, my name is Aleksandar Stamboliev, and on behalf of FIA AMSM and Accelerator UKIM, I would like to welcome you on this panel discussion for the future. We encourage all the participants to take active participation and submit your questions in the section Q&A. Gabriel and I will provide you with the answers during the session and hopefully by the end. Tonight we have the honor and the pleasure of having Mr. Gabriel Simčić, FIA Region 1 Membership Director, with us. Before we start, I would like to invite AMSM, as the only FIA mobility member from our country, to make an opening statement. Blagica, you have the floor. Blagica, we cannot hear you.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Alex, for your introduction, and welcome, Gabriel, to our second panel discussion dedicated to the FIA Region 1 Startup Challenge. We are very happy to have you here today, especially because as membership director in the FIA Region 1, representing a total market of over 36 million members in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, you are directly involved with the membership issues, and maybe you can address some pains and problems that members are facing today. Although later on we will have a whole section dedicated to the mobility as a category to apply, for the beginning, would you be so kind to explain the mobility as a term very familiar to the FIA and member clubs, but not very familiar to our audience today? The floor is yours, Gabriel. Thank you.
Thank you. I will try. I can start by saying Dobar dan, and I will continue in English. So mobility is a word indeed that you hear a lot also in the political sphere. When I started working in Brussels 15 years ago, the Commission Directorate General, so the ministry, if you will, for transport used to be called DG Trans, so transport and energy. Now it's called DG Move. And whereas you used to talk a lot about transportation, now you talk about mobility. There is not a big difference, but there is a difference. Whereas transport is something physical that you do, so the act of physically moving a person or goods, mobility is more the ability to freely move. So it's about having access to mobility. Transport is something you do, and mobility is something that you have. And to understand maybe the change in language, a lot of it has to do with the digital platforms that provide access to things. A lot of the most profitable companies nowadays, they don't sell things, they sell access to things. In politics, it's also a good solution to not talk about things, so more cars, more roads, or just think about the vehicles or the physical things, but to think about how you can use what you have better. So mobility is very much the term that we use instead of transport.
Thank you, Gabriel, for this warming up. Now I would like to go on what's more challenging for FIA. Currently, the FIA and the clubs are most important to connection for their members are their cars. Will the cars become one of the things connected to our digital world? We will change our relationship with the cars. What about the passion of all us as drivers? What about safety? Please explain what FIA Region 1 and your mobility clubs as members expect from this challenge. In which areas you're looking for solutions to the existing problems, and of course for the problems to come: autonomous cars, road safety, and environmental issues. What should innovators, entrepreneurs, and startups bring to this challenge as a solution? Please.
Okay, so that's about 20 questions in one question. So but I will do my best. Obviously, so you mentioned the connection to the car. Obviously, historically, the FIA stands for Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile. So the car is at the center of the identity of the FIA and of its members that are most of them still called automobile clubs, even though more and more the strategy is to become mobility clubs and not just focused on the car. The changing role of the car, I think everybody knows that it's an industry that is completely changing with electrification, automation, connectivity. So one way to look at it is that the way we have smartphones, we will have smart cars, and the value will be more in the data that cars generate than in the physical object. And this is something that car manufacturers are, for instance, very well aware of. Their future business model is about all the services connected with having a car or having access to a car, because the ownership angle is also something that is changing. Yeah, the sharing economy, leasing instead of owning, the fact that there's a lot of doubt about the technology. So the internal combustion engine nowadays, as a consumer, you can buy diesel, hybrid, petrol, plug-in hybrid, electric. There's a lot of confusion, and consumers don't know what kind of car they want. So a lot of them also wonder, do I want a car at all? Because it's so complicated, and there's a lot of questions. We're also in the middle of a recession coming. So, okay, lots of things. And this means also lots of challenges for the clubs, because they are really diversifying and reinventing themselves. Historically, the core product is breakdown assistance. You own a car, something wrong could happen, like breaking down, and we come to your rescue if you're a member of the club by providing breakdown assistance. So it's always been a very user-centric perspective. We're not the car manufacturers, we represent the users of the cars. And this is already something in the philosophy that startups can keep in mind when they think about our challenge. The most user-centric propositions are the ones that are the most interesting for the clubs.
So what else you can give us as tips for this category cars? How
Is
many,
it yeah.
We're discussing about 36 million customers for the whole region. What is the size of your biggest club by number of members?
Can I try to share my screen so I can?
Yes, that would be lovely.
So if I do, I think you need to give me the permission to do this, because I have some slides that can explain the clubs and the car category of the challenge. If
now,
you can...
just a second to give you the permission.
And while you do that, I can already start explaining a little bit.
Yes.
The FIA is in a lot of people's mind about motorsport. And it is true that it's the regulating body for motorsport, so Formula One comes to mind. But this is just one part of the story, and the office where I work, the FIA Region 1, we are from the mobility side. So there's sports and mobility within the FIA. And mobility is very much the automobile clubs. And we have a club in almost every country. I think maybe we don't have a member in Ireland and Greece at the moment. And you were asking which ones are the biggest ones?
Yes.
So Blagica mentioned, indeed, it's a market of 36 million individuals like you and me who might be a member of a club. So if you live in Macedonia, you might be a member of, I will try to say it correctly. AMSM
Gabriel.
AMSM, okay, yes. I need to practice. But this is very different from country to country. We have some countries with a much bigger club. So ADAC is 20 million members. It's really part of the culture. As soon as you have a car or you get your driving license, you become a member of the club. So Germany is our biggest member. In the Netherlands, we have a big member. In Austria, so I think the Netherlands is 3.5 million or something like this. Austria is over 2 million members. The clubs in Spain are also quite big. The club in Switzerland is also very big. But big is not the whole story. In Luxembourg, for instance, you might think it's a small country, but the club has 200,000 members in a country with 600,000 population. So which is a great performance, a third of the population. Also, if you think that there's kids, there's elderly people, so that's in terms of the proportion, that's a really impressive aspect. So one tip already for the startups following us, if you think about a market that you're interested in, a specific geography, you might maybe have a chance to work more with maybe a smaller club that needs to work more with external talents, and it's still quite a big market. We have lots of, let's say, medium-sized clubs with a few 100,000 members that could potentially partner up with startups. Now it seems to work, so I'll try to share my screen. Do you see it?
Yes.
Great. So I will just go really very quickly through this because I just talked about this. So it's not just about sports, forget about sports. This is what the mobility clubs are like. This is just a nice picture of the vehicles, the assistance vehicles of the Austrian member. So very much the historic product of if you break down, we come and rescue you. Here you have a helicopter because medical assistance is also an element. We have members in every country. This is in Macedonia. This is the fleet of the Macedonian club. I just mentioned the biggest one is in Germany. This is the future building of the member we have in the Netherlands. This is the club in Luxembourg. So small, but like I said, 200,000 members in a country of 600,000. So that's quite impressive. This is, I hope I got the picture right, of the building of the member in Macedonia. And indeed, almost a member in every country. You were asking about the car category.
Yes.
Okay. So I was playing a bit with a word cloud to put ideas forward. And what I wanted to do is not be too specific, because this is the purpose why we have a startup challenge. It's more about talking about the spaces where things are changing and clubs need inspiration and partners than very specific products or services. But essentially the clubs are diversifying, and they're looking at what's coming in the market. Electrification is a big one. So electric vehicles there's an entire ecosystem of services that could be connected with electric cars. Again, with electrification, the ownership might be different. So leasing of vehicles, the charging solutions, journey planning, how, if I have an electric car, how and where will I charge it? When I'm charging it, what are the services I can get in connection to this? Because it does take a bit of time to charge an electric car. So you might connect this to shops, discount programs. There's also some services that help members with the second-hand market connected to electric cars. So electric cars are there, but it's still relatively new, and there's some uncertainty. If I own an electric car, how will I resell it? So I know in Austria, for example, they can now do a diagnostic of the battery in your electric car and see its lifespan, so you have an idea of how to the valuation of your electric car on the second-hand market, for example. So electrification is a big one. Do I need an electric car is another one. In the Netherlands, they put a dongle in your OBD port in your car, and they analyze how you use a vehicle to see if electric is the powertrain for you or not, for instance. So a service that obviously they sell to the members to essentially provide advice to members on what type of car they need. Connectivity, it's a big one. I mentioned the data that cars will generate will be where the value really resides. Here in my office, we do a lot of lobbying so that eventually in the future, it's an open platform and our members have access to the data so they can offer new services. And there will be a proposal this year of the European Commission to go in that direction. So in the future, much like the smartphone, you can have different players that utilize the car to provide services. The obvious one, because clubs have been doing maintenance services and breakdown assistance, is preventive maintenance. So in the future, instead of breaking down, you will get a notification come in because you need a new battery or something is about to happen in your car. So this is just one use case of connectivity. It's one that is obvious for the clubs, but there are so many. So we're looking for different ideas on how connected cars, what connected cars will mean for consumers and what the clubs can offer when it comes to connected cars. If I go just maybe one step before all these new technologies, and again, I mentioned the clubs are user-centric. I think today already there are also much simpler things. There are much simpler pain points that car users have with the cars that exist today on the roads. When, for instance, here I see secondhand market. As a private individual, if I want to sell a car, if I try to do it by myself without going to selling it to a garage, I need to make a contract, for example. How do I do that? So clubs can, for instance, have a digital contract that maybe they offer as a freemium. And the reward there for the club is if you share your data. So if you consent to that, well, we give you the template for a contract, so you're able to sell your car on your own, but maybe we can offer, because you have a car and someone is buying a car from you, maybe we can sell add-on services to this. So an extended warranty or an insurance product or breakdown assistance. So it's good for startups to think about very simple things. All the pain points of owning a car or trying to sell a car or finding which car to buy. These things. So maybe if automation or electrification is too far away from you, think about yourself today. If you have a car, all the pain points. There's so much administration with having a car. And all this creates spaces where clubs can offer services. Another one is if you have an accident with a car, for instance, there is this paper-based pan-European format for, I don't know the word in English, but for explaining what happened so that the insurance has an understanding of the accident. This could be a digital file as well. It can be part of an app that the club offers to its members. So you always have this paper with you in case there's an accident. All these things are very practical things connected to owning a car, where maybe a startup can be quicker at offering a solution or thinking about new solutions than a club may be. I think this is already quite some ideas. Obviously, if I had all the solutions and if the clubs had all the solutions, we wouldn't have a startup challenge. So the trick here is for the guys and girls in the call today to come up with a proposal. But I hope this gives you an idea. I think insurance is one I didn't mention. It's another big field that the clubs are looking at. New insurance models. Again, it's connected to what I said before. If you own a car, you need to own an insurance. So everything that comes with having a car or needing access to a car creates spaces for startups to propose solutions.
Probably that might attract most of the interest of our startups, because insurance is most widely developed in Macedonia, especially for cars.
Okay.
So we already have a first question from our audience. Can you see it?
I'm seeing my slides, but I can try to open the chat.
In Q&A. Sorry, it's in the chat.
The electrification is a huge challenge. One in the Balkans.
That one.
Electric cars are seen as expensive and out of reach. Infrastructure is extremely limited, and there are, no matter how hard they work as automotive media, average users is still skeptical. Yeah. Well, I can reassure you, this is very much the case, not just in Macedonia, but it's everywhere. So electrification is a big market because it's the direction manufacturers are going, and because politicians are also pushing them in that direction. Now, with all the recovery packages that have been announced, manufacturers will will be incentivized to produce mostly electric cars, but there is so many bottlenecks for the users. And I think this is great for startups because we need solutions. Charging alone, for instance, I live in a city, I have a house, but I don't have a garage. So an electric car is just out of the question for me at the moment. And there are so many people like this. But they are coming. And what might help is to look at them differently. You won't replace every combustion engine car by an electric car. So you have to think about the car differently. Fleets, access to cars, different ownership models is the big, I think is the big thing.
Thank you, Gabriel, for giving a short introduction on the first section, car. We might come back again to this section later.
Sure.
Or maybe you can provide us with some examples from the first challenge.
Yeah. Sure. It's good because
by the participants for this category, because I think in the first challenge you had the cars.
Indeed. Well, the FIA really resonates as I'm trying to find some slides about this because I think I had something. Indeed. So we did this challenge the first time a year and a half ago. And what we realized is the FIA is very well known for cars. And in fact, we had the vast majority of the applications were in the car space. It's good you mentioned that insurance will be of interest because indeed one of the example I prepared for today was one of the most successful applicants. It's a company called Vouch4Me based in Slovenia. And it's a different way of looking at insurance. What I liked is that they really explained the use case and the value for the clubs and the value for consumers of going their way, instead of explaining their technology, which is a big part of it. What it is, it's a social proof model, and it's based on smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain. So there's a modern technology behind it. But instead of talking about that, they explain what it is. Basically, it's a way for people to have a less expensive insurance contract. So the typical example is a younger driver who has not a lot of experience. So typically in many countries, the insurance would be quite costly. You can have your friends and family that vouch for you that you will be a safe driver by sharing the financial risk. So if you do have an accident, your friends and family will pay a percentage of what the insurance will have to cover when you make an insurance claim. This creates a positive circle of trust because you know that people have vouched for you, so you will act safely. It's positive for the insurance because there will be less accidents and therefore less claims. It's positive for the clubs because I haven't said it, but clubs really advocate for road safety. This is a priority topic for all our members. So it's really a win-win story. And it's when you put forward a story like this that you really manage to convince people. More than the complex technology behind it. It's the business model, the value proposition, why all the parties involved have something to win from your solution.
Yes, the business model is a key for success for all of the participants. So therefore, we are here as an accelerator to help the startups in the acceleration in this phase of the application till the end of February to structure their business model and to see how it can address the needs of the clubs. For sure, insurance can be of a big interest for our startup community. Now we can move on the second part of the panel, which is dedicated to mobility, which is becoming a crucial aspect that every citizen on the planet relies on. This is especially important with all the effects we get with the pandemic COVID-19 and the restrictions on mobility. Can you tell us more about the FIA and the role of the mobility clubs?
Yeah.
And what are the expectations in this category? In addition, I would like to add that more of us are multiple type of drivers. Myself, I'm driving a bike, a motorbike, a scooter, but I'm also only member of AMSM Mobility Club as a vehicle owner. So maybe this can also open the discussion on how owning various vehicles can make me a member.
Indeed, or having access to various vehicles. And I like it when people say that, because it's, here in Brussels, it's often very funny. There's an association of bicycle users, car users. There's even a pedestrian association. And sometimes when you listen to the debates, it's as if we're talking about different people, but I cycle, I drive, I walk.
We have
we're all the same
ourselves. So maybe this could be advantage of the mobility clubs to attract people with various identities. But in saying this, I need to have services for all my identities.
Exactly, and it's the direction society is taking, especially when it comes to urban mobility. And like you said, the pandemic has really accelerated that. We see many more cycling lanes in all the big cities in Europe. You might like cars. I'm a car nut. I love cars, but I also started cycling a lot. I have an electric bike now because it's a direction where we're all going. So ever since I started working here, you hear that the strategy of most clubs is to become a mobility club. Because instead of connecting a membership to the car, a physical thing, you connect it to the person, and you can sell more things. I think same as for the car, I don't have the perfect solution, but I can tell you all the different spaces. E-bikes, it's a big one. It creates a whole ecosystem of new services. It can be quite expensive vehicles. My bike, I don't own it. It's a leased bike, for instance, because before I live more than 10 kilometers from the office. Before I make the commitment of spending maybe up to 3,000 euros on a vehicle, I want to try it out and see if I like cycling to work. So ownership is an angle, different ownership models. There are services connected to it. Maintenance is a thing. Battery swapping. I mean, they have not an unlimited lifespan. So e-bikes is one thing. Clubs, we actually surveyed clubs recently, and a lot of them want to develop more services in this space, especially because you probably all read in the newspapers that the sale of bicycle really skyrocketed in 2020. You had people ordering bikes and having to wait months to get a bike because of the whole pandemic. People who were taking maybe public transport weren't so keen, wanted to buy a bike. There were less cars on the road, so it felt it was safer. There were more cycling lanes. So there's a big market there, and every idea you can have in this space maybe can be quite attractive for the clubs. Personal mobility devices, it's another one. So the e-scooters, it's something that are popping up, and it's not something that the clubs really themselves are offering yet. Those different sharing services of e-scooters and whatnot. But
also there are certain restrictions of using those e-scooters across certain cities in Europe.
Indeed, it's very fragmented. What many of them are trying to do is offer additional value connected to it to convince cities that they're a good thing. I was recently reading one that has air pollution sensors now in their scooters, so they can give that information to the city. And this is so basically, what does having a new type of object bring in terms of value for the different players involved is the way to look at it.
But probably this is directly affecting the road safety.
Also,
introduction of e-scooters, on which part of the road they should be driving, in the bicycle line, in the car line, on the pedestrian line.
I'm not a fan myself, I have to admit. I tried it, and especially here in Brussels with cobstones, I mean, they're really good on an even surface. They're not really a transport mode. To me, it still feels like a recreational thing, but for certain segments, teenagers or people who just want to do tourism. Maybe you just get one for more than a transport mode. It feels like it's a niche thing, but they're all over, and it's one thing to consider. They are a part of the ecosystem. What we see is that the ecosystem now is wider with all types of different vehicles. The big one I have in the middle here is MaaS, stands for Mobility as a Service. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this term. Sometimes it's a bit interchangeable with mobility on demand. They talk about this a bit more in the US, and here we talk more about mobility as a service. I won't talk about it for too long, but just very quickly, this is the idea that you can combine all the different services. So nowadays, maybe instead of owning a car, or instead of a household owning a second car, you can have a mobility subscription. So I don't know, 200 or 300 euros a month of mobility credit that you can use on all the different services. So bike sharing, car rental, Uber, public transport. Whereas a few years ago, your smartphone might have looked like something like this, with lots of different mobility apps, a journey planner, and lots of different services that you have to subscribe to. The idea is that you could have only one app that tells you at any given time. It's a journey planner, but it also gives you access to the different services that there are in your city. I'm talking about this example because you can see here on top, touring. This is our Belgian member. This is something that our clubs are interested in. There is also a product in Spain from RACC on MaaS. It's a very interesting space for the clubs because instead of thinking just about the car, or here in Belgium, a lot of companies are offering company cars to employees. Instead of offering a car to employees, you could offer them a mobility subscription. Going back to the very beginning of our call, when we talked about access to mobility instead of a physical vehicle. And this is a very big trend. It's hard to put it all together because you have to convince all the players to provide access to their vehicles, or so you have to convince the Public Transportation Administration, you have to convince all the small private startups that do bike sharing. Or here you see the line in Belgium is the public transport enterprise, is the car rental. There's a bike sharing thing. So you have to convince all of them. But maybe you are not the one who puts it all together, but you have a product that can be with open APIs connected to this application, and you can offer one part of a MaaS solution.
But also I would like to comment that the mobility clubs by size and by position brings their influence in the ecosystem. Yep. So if the startup have an idea and the mobility clubs is willing to implement it, then probably they will have more saying in convincing all the stakeholders to start using their service.
Of course, I mean, this is where our strong point is that, so the clubs, one thing I hear a lot is that we're not just a profit-driven company that belongs to shareholders. We're a club and we belong to our members. So what we want is to offer the most value to users, not necessarily make the most money. And this creates quite a trusted brand. This is why we have so many members that are members of a club. So club members are quite loyal. And also when you need to talk with politicians, the club is a trusted stakeholder because of that. This is why this example with MaaS, we think the clubs are a good aggregator of those different transport services because they can be perceived as being independent and trustworthy. So it's not just that it's a big market with lots of members, but it's also the credibility of the clubs.
And they can gather all the stakeholders.
Exactly.
And start negotiating how to move forward, because each of the stakeholders would like to have their customers satisfied. And maybe somebody can come with an application where each provider of different mobility service can still have his own app, and this will be just aggregator. So there are various technology behind which can be introduced
Indeed. And the mentality is changing fast, whereas in the past, every transport service provider was really working in silo, and public transportation wanted to have the users using public transport, and cars wanted to sell cars. And now with all the capacity issue, they realize that if they work together on a solution like MAS, it's not that they will have to share the pie, is that they create a bigger pie, and they can all have a big share of it. So MAS is a big trend in transportation policy, and it's definitely the way we'll move about in cities in the future if we get there is increasing populations in cities, so we need to find solutions. And this is one that will be a very important market.
Are the drones somehow connected as mobility?
So we have 5 clubs. So over the 103 clubs we have at the moment in Region 1. We have 5 clubs that have drone services, but we also have a concept for what we call a drone academy, which is looking at all the different business models that are possible for a club in the drone space. There was this research that looked at 150 different drone use cases, and 16 were identified as spaces for the clubs. So indeed, it's one thing. What exists today, it's training courses for people to learn how to fly drones, because clubs also have driving schools. So this is the next, it's not so far away from the philosophy. You train drivers, you train drone pilots. Drone assistance, fixing drones for people. But there's going to be lots of services that clubs can offer with drones. Medical assistance is one also. If you have to transport medical supplies quickly, drones are a good solution. So for sure, there's a future space there for clubs.
So probably the drones can address a solution for the second and for the third topic, mobility and services. What you already elaborated, that in some clubs they have even training for drone users.
Indeed.
So what was the most advanced solution from this challenge in this category?
Sorry, you mean the assistance category?
Yes, you had it only assistance in the first category, in the first challenge.
So in the first challenge, we really had a lot of applicants related to cars and also road safety, with lots of, for instance, a lot of the startups are developing apps. Solutions against distraction was a big one. We had, I think, 3 startups that had different ways of looking at how do you reduce distraction while driving by basically switching off or neutralizing notifications in your smartphone. We got a lot of topics related to the car. So this wider category that we have this time around, we didn't have it the time before. It's called assistance, and the idea there is that so traditionally a club is selling breakdown assistance. Why is it that it's only when your car breaks down that you call the club? You can have home assistance if you need a plumber, or if you need a locksmith or an electrician. I don't know, if something else breaks down, someone can come to your house and fix it for you. If the club has helped in terms of finding trusted service providers, the membership model, you can use the assets that the clubs have. They have call centers. So you call the club just the way you would call them when your car breaks down, and they come and fix your problem in your house. So this is one thing, home assistance. I can maybe show, this slide is like this because basically the strategy from a club could be, historically, we are a car club, we're becoming a mobility club. Why are we not just a people's club? So basically, any kind of assistance that someone can need in their daily life, we could try to provide that. It could be related to health. It could be related to, I mean, the elderly is also a big thing. It's a growing market as well with, for instance, connected device. If elderly and retired, you don't want to go to a home, but you want to stay living in your house. There's lots of services that can be provided for that. So health, lifestyle. At the moment, again, with the pandemic, our lives have changed drastically. So we need things to come to us in our houses. E-commerce is a big thing. So in a way, sky is the limit. Even though the brand is the automobile club, the more you go away from the physical object, which is the car, towards just helping people, the broader the services that you can offer.
So I see this as a huge opportunity because you already have loyal customers of 36 million across the continents. Probably you're going to attract even more customers by putting the people in the center, but not the objects, because then you get more people which would like to use more of your services. This brings me to the next section. What a startup will benefit from this challenge?
Sure.
We're talking about February, when the accelerator and AMSM will provide them assistance and support in the application process. But what after?
Indeed. So we're now in February. We have, I think, a little bit less than 3 weeks for the application. The next steps are, so by default, all the applications that we get that we feel are, no matter how we feel about it, but if it's publishable, let's say, if we understand what it is, we will publish it in what we call the Innovation Hub. This is our internal resource for all our clubs. We have over 1,000 individual staff that have access to this, and it's where we publish all kinds of information. And we have a section called Startups, where all the startups that apply, again, if it's of a good quality enough to be published, it will be published. And 2 years ago, I think we published about 75 startups in this catalog. So when you go through the application on our website, it might feel very long, but the reason why it's long like this is that it's almost one-to-one what we will publish in this resource for our members. So one aspect of it is what we will promote a bit more actively to our members from a selection that we do. Another is the fact that by default, just by applying, you are, I mean, as long as you take the GDPR thing, that you're happy to share the information to our members, you are by default in our database, and the clubs can find you.
So even if you're not selected for the next
even
level,
if you're not selected, you're already a winner because you are in this. Do you see my Google now?
We can see your screen. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I can show you maybe one individual. Do you see the page I just opened?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, this is what we publish. It's all the information you've provided in your application. Sometimes maybe we do a bit of proofreading, but the contact details of your startup. You can provide a slide deck, a short video, or any kind of material that you have, and all the different fields that you have in the application. It's really worth completing it all, because this is your fact sheets, if you will, about the startup that we will have in our database, and that the clubs can find.
So you actually, even now, you're increasing your services as a federation by providing this service to your.
Yeah, for sure. So the reason why we have this program is that basically I think 4 or 5 clubs have done their own startup programs, but it tends to be more at the national level. And we're more of an international brand, and startups also like to think big. So you might want to have contracts in multiple countries. So you might be more attracted to applying for an FIA challenge than a club challenge. So this is the value that we try to bring. The second thing is that we will have, I hope you're back with my presentation now.
Yes.
Okay. We will have pitch events. In the past, that was a physical event. Of course, now it's going to be a lot of Zoom. It also depends on the applications we will get. The plan will be most likely that we will have 3 for each of the categories. So 1 event for car, 1 for mobility, and 1 for assistance. in about April, May, June, and we will soon announce the dates for those events. This is more like a first pitch opportunity where, so here we've already made a selection. Maybe we'll have 15, 20, we'll see, depending on the quality. It will not be super detailed at this stage. It will be more about pitching your idea to trigger the interest in the clubs to make an appointment with you to have more one-to-one conversations with the startups and the clubs. So last time around, it was a physical matchmaking. This looks like a picture from a different time in history when you could have lots of people in a room and people sitting across from each other. But essentially, after the pitch events, it will be, we will create a platform where clubs can book a time with the different startups, and you can have a longer conversation with the different clubs. Because some topics are more appealing to certain clubs, and it's the value starts really being there when you have more one-to-one conversation with the business development people of the clubs.
Actually, these bilateral meetings can help the startups develop their product or service.
Of course.
They can get more direct insight on some data for which they didn't have access.
Of course. So we're very much, the idea of this program is that we just provide a list of startups for the clubs to see if they're interested in them, and we provide those meeting opportunities. And this matchmaking will be more, again, I imagine, because we're in the coming months, it will be more conference calls and things like this. And then we have, so even though this is not, the idea is to not identify the best startup, it's more about matching startups with the clubs. We will still have a final selection of the ones that we really feel are interesting and that we want to put forward to our members. And we would use an event that we have in October. This is every year in Vienna, at the headquarters of our club in Austria that you see here. It's called the Marketing Workshop. And there we have about 60 marketing and business development experts from the clubs. So this is one more opportunity to have face-to-face discussions with the clubs that might be interested in partnering with the startups. And I really hope this happens because it's nice to see people face-to-face.
For a change.
Indeed.
And again.
So this is really the different steps of the program, and I also had prepared maybe a list of tips that I
what you experienced from the first call on what in which areas or steps the startups should pay more attention.
Yeah. So this is the first picture that popped up when I typed advice, so I thought it was funny and I kept it. But so I think there will be a lot of me repeating myself, but focus on the solution. So focus on the user. What are the pain points for a user? What are you providing to a club that the club couldn't do by itself? So talk about this more than about the technology, because people you will try to convince are marketeers. They're not engineers. You can say I have the best AI, or I have the best algorithm, or I have the best, I don't know, I know how to use blockchain or whatever. But we have no way of knowing if this is true or not, because we're not really experts in that. What we are experts in is what the members of the clubs tell us are their pain points, where they would like services. And clubs do have their own, most of them, their own innovation strategy with areas where they want to come up with solutions for their members. So it's more about the solution, and the technology is more an enabler. Of course, talk about the technology if this is what you're good at, but don't think like an engineer, think like a marketeer.
Or think like a person, because your service, your needs to be solved.
Exactly. Present a win-win. So this is the thing I was saying before with the startup that was quite successful last time. How do we both tend to benefit from working together? That's obvious, but it's very often not presented, or it's not the first thing that is being presented. So if you've managed to identify the win-win, start with that. Show that you understand what the clubs are. And again, I will insist on this because we are not, the FIA is not a commercial entity. We're not like a multinational that will decide, okay, we want to develop this and we have national branches and we go for it. And we are just a network of clubs. So really think about the clubs more than the FIA. And so clubs are basically representing mobility users. That's the starting point. They tend to have a membership model. So it's not 100% of the case, but most clubs are structured as a B2C subscription service. So you pay a certain amount of money per year, and thanks to that, you get an array of services. And breakdown assistance is the famous one, but there are many others. And clubs don't rely only on breakdown assistance because this is something that doesn't happen often, that your car breaks down. So they do need to offer value to their members at a number of times throughout the year, so you keep the relationship. So think about what the club is and show that you understand it in the application. So I think one of the questions is, why would a club sell this, or why would someone buy this from a club? The business model, this is of course very wide, but what it means is, how do you imagine that your solution will generate some revenue? Who are the players involved? What are all the different aspects that needs to come together to create a product that you can market? So again, showing that you think like an entrepreneur and not just like an engineer. Facts and figures, obviously, if you've already done something and you have some figures to prove your point, I don't know if it's an app, how many downloads it has had or whatever, or consumer surveys or market research, any figures you have brings credibility. And this is a last one, but it's maybe it sounds a bit silly, but so there are 3 weeks to go to apply. I would really encourage people to download the entire application form instead of starting to complete it. Look at all the questions, because that's and take your time to think about it. That's always the best way of going about applying. So maybe I can try to show you the application. It is quite long. Do you see it?
Yes, we are in this now at the application. I just would like to add it for the Macedonian startups. We have AMSM in the accelerator, which can help with advice to the startups. We have discussion a few days ago that you already have similar initiatives across the countries where different startup hubs with the clubs are trying to work out together to reach out to startups. Okay. So luckily in North Macedonia, we have our partnership to provide direct support to the startups during their application process.
This is great. So indeed, if you work together on this, taking your time, and instead of, and it's completely understandable that it happens like this, but we got a lot last time where we see that you're just copy pasting and recycling your existing pitch or your existing idea. So a lot of the questions here are, how can we work together? Why would a club be interested? Why would someone buy this from a club? So there are a lot of questions, but it's worth thinking about them and really adapting the application to us, to the person you're talking to, which is the clubs.
We already received few applications which were just to show us what's their product, but they didn't pay much attention on the code and on the markets.
Yeah,
it's good that there is a pre-selection by our side in partnership with AMSM that can nail those differences.
Great. Indeed.
And Gabriel, sorry to interrupt you, because we also had a few applications regarding the application and the question, can you share information about how much funding you currently have? It is regarding to a financial funding. Yeah.
Indeed. So we had the first time, and now again a lot of discussion with the clubs. What maturity level clubs expect of a startup to start working with them? And in fact, it's so different from one club to another that it's on purpose that we didn't define this in our challenge, because you have some. I remember it was Austria telling me this, that really don't mind if you're a very early phase, and that they guide you along the way and they help you grow. You have others that need really a market-ready solution. There was a bit more in the Netherlands were telling me this. So we have a question about the maturity level, but this is not something that will discriminate a good idea, because different members in our network are looking at startups with a different maturity level. So you don't get scored on your maturity.
Okay.
But you need to be a registered company.
Yeah, yeah. So I think there is something that the idea is that you have at least 2 people, 2 staff.
Yeah, that's what we are looking as an accelerator as well. I would like to add that for this call, for the most ideas which have a business potential, the accelerator is willing to invest up to 30,000 euros, which is a good combination of us bringing investment in the company and having direct access to all the member mobility clubs from FIA Region 1. And of course, during that process, we have AMSM. It's easier because we are addressing the Macedonian audience to support the startup with the technical insight about what actually the mobility clubs needs.
That's great, and thanks for that.
I think we are reaching our 1 hour, although we had some technical difficulties at the beginning.
Yeah, we did good.
I apologize to our participants for that, but we are so much on various platforms all day long, so some technical mistakes can happen, of course.
Yes, I think we did quite well. We're 2 minutes to the hour, so I don't know if there are more questions in the chat. I'm trying to look at it.
I don't see any more questions. That's becoming more and more challenging how to inspire the participants in the virtual world to pose more questions.
But one thing I can say for sure is that don't also hesitate to contact us if you want more information about specific clubs. I would encourage you to do your research as well, and to if a lot of startups already know an idea of the different geographies they're interested in. So find out what is the club in that country that you're interested in, and what it is that they do. If you want to ask us questions about this, we're always happy to help. So look at our website. You have all our email addresses. The lead on this project is my colleague Sarah Cambier.
Yes, she was already addressing the Macedonian startup scene last Monday.
Indeed. So you can write to Sarah, you can write to me. We'll be happy to answer your emails.
Thank you for your open space for and access to our startups.
Thank you.
So Blagica, we're reaching the end. Shall we thank our audience, and especially Gabriel for giving us 1 hour of his precious time to provide us more insights on how we should start.
Well, Gabriel, I can thank you. I can't thank you enough for your time and effort.
But likewise, it's great that you're helping us promote this program. So I'm really hoping and looking forward to seeing which applications we get from Macedonia.
Well, we'll keep in touch, and you will share information about the applications from Macedonia.
Great. Looking forward.
Once again very much.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you. With this, we are closing this panel for tonight.
Bye-bye.
Stay tuned till end of February. Bye.